think something that's really common in the online business and coaching world is going into it not knowing who you are. And I say that because you are now your own boss. You are your own manager. You're your own accountant, at least for a little while. You're doing everything. And if you don't know yourself like the back of your hand, it's like sending a 19-year-old to Hollywood. You're going to lose yourself.
Welcome to the Societygal podcast, where trailblazing female entrepreneurs and creatives come together to spark change and build their dreams. This is where your passion meets purpose, and together, we're crafting a future where everyone has the tools to succeed.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Societygal podcast. Dana is here with KJ. We are so excited to have her here with us. And we're going to talk all about really having a aligned business, aligned launch to your business, and how that all plays together with self-intimacy and astrology parts here. We're going to talk about and delve into when it comes to your business. And I think a lot of times when we think business in our mind, we think a lot of those logical, tangible, businessy type things, but we're going to get more onto the spiritual level, more onto another level that we can look more inward when it comes to our business. So there's so much KJ is going to share, and we're so excited to have you here. KJ, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and then just really tell us about your story? We want to hear your story and how you got here today and how you help those around you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dana. It's so fun to be here chatting and talking on this lovely Friday. I am a spiritual business coach who primarily uses astrology to do everything that I do. I'm an astrologer first and foremost, and then I used my background and experience in agency life and social media marketing to make all of those things so much better, more authentic, especially for the person like in a solo entrepreneurship kind of role. All of that is right up my alley. Everything from using energetics to blending it with business strategy, down to where should you go in the world in order to make your business even better. And all of it relates back to astrology, which is super misunderstood by a lot of people, but I think we're getting there.
Yeah, and we're going to help everyone understand on here. Tell us a little bit more about how you got to this place. How did you get into astrology and integrating that with business? What happened in your life to bring you here?
Well, as you can imagine, it's probably not the career that most third graders say they're going to do when they grow up. I was going to be an actor or a journalist, something very artistic and creative. I actually went to art school and had to drop out my first semester. I got really, really sick with mystery illness, chronic illness stuff. No one could really figure out what it was. And when I went home at 17, I graduated early. I was there, just this young woman trying to figure stuff out. And I was so sick. And I was like sleeping 14 hours a day, really going through it. So I went home, back to my hometown, stayed in my parents' house, felt so defeated. And I read as much as I could about everything that people don't talk about. So that was anything from alternative healing to Vedic astrology. That was the first astrology book, Vedic astrology, palmistry. And then I had too many lines on my palms. I was like, I can't do palmistry. Like, that's not my thing. And I just explored all these different modalities, trying to find something to give me a better clue of how I might be able to feel better. Everything pivoted from there because I started to understand more about holistic nutrition and how our medical system, doctors aren't really trained in nutrition. And we interact with food probably at least 3 times a day, most of us. And we can help heal ourselves so much with that. And that's a big part of it. And the other part is the soul. And they're all connected, mind, body, spirit. And so when I started to learn about healing with food, and I was getting better, but it wasn't really fixing the issue. And I started to really learn about how to heal my spirit through astrology and modalities that are more spiritual and soulful, learning about the chakras and things like that. It all clicked together. And then I ended up putting my illness in remission about 4 or 5 years later through the process of creating this sense of self-intimacy through everything I learned by delving into my astrological birth chart and the history of me and my story and how it all makes sense and how it's all part of this bigger picture. And now I feel better than ever, but I didn't sign up for this. It finds you.
I love how you took the initiative for yourself, right? This wasn't working for me. You weren't just like sitting like, hey, yes, that's my life. I'm going to be in chronic pain for the rest of my life because my doctor told me so. I think that's so amazing now that so much of this knowledge is coming forth of other modalities or other science is other ways to look at healing yourself. It's just so unique. I've never really heard of someone taking the spiritual level and the nutritional level, kind of bringing that together to heal yourself. That's really amazing to hear that you were able to dig into that and to really work on yourself on a whole other level, which we're going to talk a lot more about today when it comes to your business as well, that it's not just one science or one way to look at it, right? Which is a lesson today. There's so many other ways to look at it and be curious. I love how curious you were in your story to figure out a different way that works for you. That's business, right? When you work with clients, when we see people in business, it's being curious and finding ways and strategies that work for you, not copying somebody else and duplicating people around you, right?
Yeah, 100%. I love that you said that. It's about the curiosity and the trial and error and seeing what works best and seeing what feels best. You can see how they're doing it and it might be working really well. And then you might try it on for size and be like, that's not for me. But I'm really glad that Sarah is like getting all the results from that.
Yes, I like how you said it doesn't feel good because it may bring you money, it may bring you some type of success, but in your life, right? How is it feeling? I love that. So, how did you bring this into helping people with their business as well?
Right.
So how did that kind of come alive?
Well, I think a lot of times people will get on podcasts and they're like, I was in the dark night of the soul. And then all of a sudden my life was so much better. And then you skip over all the details. I'm always a person who wants to know, what were the first few steps? How did you do that? So I went and I got a nutrition science degree, public health oriented, all of that. I was going to be a translator of medical research for the donor. I would take extensive medical research and break it down into layman's terms. Then I would write emotional stories for the purpose of raising money for nonprofits. And I was like, wow, that's kind of like what I do now. So I've been using that template of like breaking down really hard concepts and using it in a way like, here's how this is how this can help you or someone else. Like, this is what we can do to better humanity with this really intense information. And then when I started doing that, it translated into, I got a job writing Wikipedia articles for a digital agency. And I learned a lot about small business. The agency I was working at was pretty small. And then I learned a lot about big business because I was writing articles for BP and 3M and all these like semi-controversial, very, very, very large companies. And started thinking about business from all these different facets. And while I was doing that, I was working with my neighbor at the time, who is just like this powerhouse marketing MBA social media person. And she took me under her wing and was like, I'm going to give you an MBA. Just do what I say. Just help me out. I would do social media content. I learned everything from this woman. And so much about small business. We were doing wellness stuff together, like local gyms, massage people. She said, I know a lady who needs help with astrology marketing, and that's your thing, right? I had been into astrology as a hobby, reading charts for friends and studying it since high school. I was like, yeah, I love it. When I really sat down with myself, I was like, I really want to study this more. So I went to astrology school in Portland, Oregon, where I was living. I have all this marketing background, all this business background, the strategy stuff that most people don't have handed to them on a platter in the way that I did, very luckily. So I learned all those things. Everyone has a good idea, and then to have this strategy behind it, I'm so grateful for that one woman who came into my life and taught me all those things. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go learn astrology and I'm going to help this woman with the social media for this astrology brand. And then I was like, I want to do this for every astrology brand. I just want to do astrology. Like, forget the other wellness stuff. This is really interesting. And kind of spiraled from there because at the time I'm in my early 20s and I'm in school with people in their 50s and 60s. And they're like, I don't understand social media. Can you help me? Can you help me? And it kind of turned into this thing where I was using my skills to do astrology marketing. And then it got to the point where I was like, well, there's a different way that each of these people need to be showing up. Because of their own charts, their own personalities. And like, what color is your brand because you're an Aries sun or you're a Gemini moon? Like, are you this loud, vibrant, sassy brand? Or are you polite and demure and quiet, more of the librarian archetype? And both of those are totally fine. And I love people from both of those. And when you show up authentically with your chart signatures, it's so much easier to do that. So that's how everything kind of blended together with the business background and the astrology, the long-winded answer.
Yeah. And I mean, just first, I want to say how important like mentorship is, right? When you have a mentor, it's like getting a degree because you can apply so much in such a short amount of time. Like a 4-year degree can be the same as 6 months in a really great mentorship under somebody. And how cool you had the opportunity and how important that is to just learn so much real world knowledge that brought you into the next step. It's cool to see you look back on all those things and see how it developed you now. That mentorship sounds amazing. Like it really jump-started you in the right place. With all that, really, I like how you said, point out as well, everybody had a different, right? They need to figure out the different way they're going to show up in their business. When it comes to launching a business, people getting their business up and going, which is just the hardest thing ever. It's so hard to do. Like in the beginning, all these things are new, right? Especially if you're older, but everything's new. You're trying to figure yourself out. How am I going to show up? Who am I at the same time? What are the biggest mistakes people are making when it comes to launching their business? Based on your expertise, what are you seeing that is a really big mistake or just holding people back?
I think something that's really common in the online business and coaching world is going into it not knowing who you are. And I say that because you are now your own boss. You are your own manager. You're your own accountant, at least for a little while. You're doing everything. And if you don't know yourself like the back of your hand, it's like sending a 19-year-old to Hollywood. You're going to lose yourself. You're going to get lost in the wind. And then you're going to potentially face people who are like, you're going to get bombarded with all the ads. Here's how to make 50K and
all the great marketing out there.
Doing that, it's self-sabotage. You can't even begin to explain how toxic some of it is. If you don't have a really strong backbone of like, not for me, sis, good for you though. You know who you are and how you're supposed to show up in the world and what your values are. And your chart can help you decode all of these things. Like that's what I do when I help people build their businesses with astrology. One of the first things we always start with is values. That's something that doesn't change. It shows up in your chart. And if you build your business based on that, you'll have a business for years.
Yeah, that's just such a great answer. I ask that question a lot. I talk a lot about this topic with people of launching your business, starting your business. I like how you said going into it, not knowing who you are. But what is also beautiful is going into it, not knowing who you are, you can find yourself, which is really awesome in it. But it's knowing that you need to find yourself, like knowing that you need to figure it out for yourself instead of going in. I think we talked about before, like trying to perfect a strategy or somebody else's way of doing things. If I do it that perfectly, it should work for me. And I don't know how many times I've done that, like taken a course, followed every single step of what they tell you, and it's just not working. And we're like, it should work. They told me it should work, And you're wondering why. For me, it took a long time to figure that out. It took me years to figure that out. So everyone just listen to what she's saying right now. So you go into it knowing that you need to find yourself and your values, the foundational parts of you, right? But I think that's the biggest thing is we continually taking courses. We had someone on the networking call in Societygal over here just the other day who said, I just keep taking too many courses. I need to stop myself from taking another course and just spending too much money on that and not committing to it, just thinking it's going to solve our problems. And what would happen if we looked inward, right? It's harder to.
Right. That's a good point too, because a lot of people think they need more knowledge. And it's like you have a lot of innate skill. Knowledge is super important. But there's a line of like acquiring knowledge to avoid looking deeper or to avoid implementing it because it's scary to take that risk.
It's easy to press a button, but it's way easier than looking inward and trying to figure it out yourself. But there's beauty in that. I mean, like writing an essay, you can go to ChatGPT and go write an essay, but did you learn anything? You're not learning anything about yourself or your mind, having to go back and reassess it. Use your brain to make it the best it can be and create new thoughts and new ideas. It's the same thing with your business, is having to look at the rough draft and
like if the process of evaluating yourself, and evaluating your business and like taking the risk, like that's so hard. I mean, business is the easiest way to get into shadow work where it starts to show you all the hard things, all the bad things about yourself that you're like, I want to work on that. I want to improve that.
Yes.
It's like a crash course in fixing yourself. Not necessarily that you need fixing, but we're all on personal growth journeys and business will shove it in your face.
Yeah, it's like a mirror. It shows up in how you show up in marketing, what your messaging is, all those things show up if something's not happening right here. Now, how can we, with your amazing knowledge and skill set, which I did love before we move into this, I did love how you said we already have so much knowledge within ourselves and we think we need more. I think there's a balance with everything, but we always think we have so much at our fingertips. Like we're almost like overstimulated with like so much knowledge, like so much information that like we always think like we're on reels, right? We're on the scrolling. We're like, I need more information. If I just have this information, I'm going to be better. But I almost feel like that's numbing. It makes us feel like we're doing something.
The dopamine loop is so real. I've like it, and it feels good to take in the information.
It feels good and it feels like we're doing something. So how can we actually do something, right? How can we use the power that you talked about of self-intimacy, looking inward, and astrology that you're really an expert in to launch an aligned business? So like, how can we launch it? How can we continue to grow a business that is really aligned, that actually feels good, and the strategies are working for us? And how can we use that inward look and upward look when it comes to, making an aligned business?
There's a couple of different things that I think you can really branch into. The first one being using astrology to know yourself, where you might look at your chart and say, okay, I'll use myself, for example. I'm a Sagittarius rising. So my branding, your rising, it shows up how you are in the public. It's like your gate. Mm-hmm. So your rising sign is going to show you like kind of what's your aesthetic, what's your mood. I might interject some kind of like comedy and my colors might be brighter and they might be more fun and playful. Whereas someone with a Capricorn rising and earth sign might be more, their brand might look like an old study with rich jewel tones and kind of have this regal sense to them. And so that's just one example. You can use it in your branding. You can use it in your messaging by looking at your Mercury sign. Your Venus helps you determine your values and what you deem important. Where do you get the most pleasure through your work? I have my Venus in the 7th house of other people, and I love one-on-one work. And that's primarily what I've done for 5 years now. And your sun sign, which most everyone knows their sun sign, that's your primary zodiac sign, that can show you kind of what your natural gift is. So I'm a Gemini sun. I love to write. I love to speak and connect with people and share information. What I do is what we're doing here. And then your moon sign shows you like what you need to do to take care of yourself. And even though that might not show up directly in business, it's the other underbelly of business so that you can keep producing. If you're in alignment with your moon sign, then you know how to spend your evenings and weekends so that you're well rested and recharged. I have a Cancer moon. A bath once a week in some form is non-negotiable for someone like myself with a Cancer moon. Those kinds of things help pull away and be a little introverted so you can do what you need. That's one example, using your chart to tell you who and what you're supposed to do. My other favorite way is using the zodiac as a calendar and using it as what are the best time cycles to do things. We live in this world that's on all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Like 9 to 5, we're in this grind. It's a cadence that doesn't really stop. When we use astrology as a calendar, which is what the ancients used to do, it was the calendar before we had the Gregorian calendar, January through December. Our calendar used to start in mid-March, which is usually when people say that they get the oomph to start doing things. That's when things start happening. And that's when things should start happening. January and February are still the end of the year, winding down and preparing.
We need to wind down in those months.
Yeah, we're supposed to be in our slippers eating soup.
Yeah.
We're not out here combusting things, making stuff happen, which we do in March and April in Aries season. If you've been in astrology Instagram for a little bit, have heard the term Mercury retrograde. But there's a couple other retrogrades too. And these are periods where the ancients used to pull back and rest more. These weren't the moving forward periods. Mercury retrograde, for example, happens 3 times a year for 3 weeks at a time. And it's about the exact same ratio that we sleep. And so I look at it as like, these are our sleep periods. In business, last month in August was a retrograde month. Like, what can you do that's not necessarily like sleeping, but dialing it back a little bit? For me, I was editing, revising, repurposing old content, kind of just riding the wave. I didn't launch anything new. I didn't try to announce anything or push anything too hard to kind of align with that. And it went a lot easier than Mercury retrogrades have gone in the past. And that's just one example. So use it to help you find yourself and use it as a calendar to help you plan when the best time to launch, when the best time to push, and when the best time to rest.
Hey, this is Dana from Societygal, and I wanted to take a quick break to tell you about the Societygal Academy. the exclusive membership that helps entrepreneurs like you launch, grow, and scale your business. Join weekly expert-led workshops, access on-demand courses, and connect with a supportive network of go-getters just like you. Are you ready to elevate your business? Visit Societygal Academy today.
I love how you said building a business is a spiritual job as you understand yourself more. It's really a spiritual thing. And that astrology is an important tool. A lot of you may be hearing a lot of what she's saying and being like, what is this stuff that you're talking about? Lots of terms are being thrown out there. Like KJ said in the beginning, it sounds overwhelming. You may hear all these terms, but really be curious and take some action for yourself. Everything about business, when you're doing it intentionally in a way that you're following your own, like you said, birth charts, calendar, whether that works for you or not, finding a way like this, if you're curious about this, finding a way where you can back yourself up when I need to stop, or I am like this, so I need to do this. I've talked to a few people about astrology. It's not like an Enneagram. Like you're just like, oh, this is me, this is who I am, and I can't change, and this is just who I am. You have something to say about that? Because I feel like people think they look at astrology and look at this and like, oh, is this another Enneagram? Or it's like, that's just who I am. And I just don't see, when people talk about astrology, experts like you that use it really well for their clients and for themselves, I never see them like, oh, that's just who I am, and that's just what I'm going to do. It's more of like, I'm curious, I'm assessing, I'm acting, I'm proactive. So what do you have to say more about how to treat this knowledge in your business?
Oh, that's a really good point. One of my pet peeves is when people who casually love astrology will just be like, oh, he's a Virgo.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that means nothing to me. That means like this much. Because I think there is this sort of social aspect to astrology where I've heard the term space racism, and I think it's kind of funny, but it's true, where we're like, oh, I don't like Scorpios, or I don't like Geminis. And it's like, well, actually, you have a chart that is a wheel. If anyone ever shows you a chart that's a table, it's not a chart. It has to be a circle. And in that circle, you have 12 signs. Just because you don't necessarily have planets in that sign, you might say, I don't like Scorpios. Honey, you have Scorpio in you. You have it. What is it about that piece that is maybe fearful for you to embrace and integrate? Like my mother's a Virgo, and when I was younger, I was like, oh, Virgo energy is always crashing my party. When I got older, I was like, wow, I really needed Virgo energy. I really needed structure and practicality and follow through and all these things that Virgo is really good at. If you feel a certain way about a certain sign because of a certain experience with someone, consider the fact that you and that person have all 12 signs within you, and also have a whole chart. I've used it before to describe our birth charts as like cocktails. Like you can have a Bloody Mary and a Cosmopolitan, and they're both vodka cocktails, but they taste very different. And they're very different moods. And so you can have someone who's an Aries sun and an Aries sun, but they might have completely different rest of their charts, and they're completely different people. And so it's like a thumbprint or a snowflake. Our birth charts are so unique. And so it's not the same as like, you are this type, you are this type, you are this type. It's kind of like, it's like abstract art. It's like, oh, you have a flavor of this and you have a flavor of this. Like, what is your unique concoction? So it's more, I guess abstract is the word for it, within the bounds of a system.
And I loved how you said, if you're seeing something that you don't like in something else, it's usually what you have to work on yourself, or you have to look inward on yourself of, what does that mean for me if I'm pointing out, I don't like that, I don't like this about this person? It's usually something within ourselves we have to work on. They're often mirrors of what we're seeing. Thank you for breaking that down. More than just this one thing or this label. It's really something you dig deeper in and use in your business. Can you give us an example of a client that has used this tool to help them in their business?
Well, one that comes to mind is someone who was recently in my business program and was coming from a 9-to-5, very structured corporate life, moving into creating her spiritual business. And she was really struggling with the whole hours thing, like getting up and still being in the routine of 8 to 5 and putting this pressure on herself to fulfill the same schedule that was going on while she was in corporate, and was kind of leading into burnout. And she's like, I don't really know how I can keep up this pace. And I was like, well, do you realize that you can rewrite the whole script? And it was kind of like a light bulb moment where it was like, well, I actually am way more in control. And I can work all day on a Sunday if I feel like it. And you can even look in the charts and see where different days of the week should be used for different purposes for different people. Some people will say Mondays are super serious. For me, Mondays are not serious at all. We ease into Monday and do self-care stuff on Monday. And Tuesday is serious. Wednesday is serious. And Thursday is serious. Then I taper things off. Equilibrium Friday and even doing work on Saturday. And so your chart can kind of show you more about your energy patterns. And that's what we did with this client. I was like, let's just map out your ideal schedule. Like, how do you want to spend your Mondays? And then let's put this into blocks, block it off and figure out like, what are you doing in the morning block, the afternoon block, and the evening block on each day? So you're still putting in your 35 hours.
Yep.
And it works for you. And she's like, oh, I feel so much better about this. Like, I get to have like my slow Wednesday morning or break it up or not work Wednesdays and then work on Sundays. And it felt so much better. And I think there's a huge mental shift there that happened where it was like, I'm really in charge. I get to do this and I get to pick and be my own boss, truthfully. Because we could just end up creating jobs for ourselves that drain us just as much as our corporate job did.
That example of just that one tiny shift, right? Is that one tiny shift of awareness and of understanding energy, because we can work 35 hours or 40 hours or even just more hours, right? 50 hours. But that could be the same amount of work we can do in 20 hours if we just shift our energy, right? Because we're way more productive when we feel good. We complete so much more. We're so much more creative in our business, right? And so when we have that prime time, it makes a huge difference. And for me, for example, I used to have a lot of meetings in the evening right after my kids went to bed because I thought that was the only time I could do it. And I would just dread any meetings that would be at the end of the day. Like, oh my gosh, okay, I just put my kids down. Now I have to go and be at work again. And I just made a rule for myself. No longer is my calendar open in the evening. It's not. I'm just going to instead get a babysitter for the afternoon, have my mom babysit the kids, find other resources where I can be my prime time 1 to 4. I feel good to show up in a meeting, do podcasts, do those things. So when I get home after my kids are done, I don't have to rush through my kids' bedtime or anything. I don't like to feel rushed. I just want to hang out with them and have my energy towards them for the night. So I can just and then be with my husband, connect with my husband, and then just relax and read a book. And it's just that one shift was crazy, you know, and I have to look more into it. I keep talking to amazing people who are talking about astrology, and I'm like, I got to look more into it. I'm sure there's things behind that. What I love about these examples is you may make shifts in your business and your life, and there's reasons why, right? And I think astrology is a great way to understand why. Like, why are we making this change in our life? Why are we better at this time of day? And really lean into that, which I love seeing that you're doing for yourself and your clients, of that extra level almost of like, oh, I'm gonna lean into that. Okay, then the future decisions you make more sense, which I love.
Right. And yours, it might have something to do with your energy pattern, but it's also showing up in your values. You obviously care about having intentional time with your family. And when you create a spiritual value-based business, your value is, okay, well, I still want to have my evenings and weekends for my kids and family. And that is using your chart and yourself in the prospect of building your business.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that example of the schedule. I think schedules can be so life-changing, like just shifting it for yourself. You talked about this a little bit with how we can use this in our business. So can we just revisit this real quick? Like the 3 ways to use astrology to realign with yourself and your business. What are the 3 ways? Let's list them. I know we talked about them. Briefly talk about each one more time. You're going to listen to this podcast, leave this podcast with ways you can use astrology, be curious about it, and use it in your own business. That's really simple for anybody curious or anyone new or who is familiar with astrology to use. So I love these tips you gave.
Yeah, like make like a little workshop out of it. So like if we were to like workshop, like here's 3 things you can take away today and implement. My first one I always go to is working with the moon, because it is so literal. We can go out every night and have this tangible connection with it. We can track it very easily. If you go out and you're like, oh, the moon's gone, it's probably a new moon, the beginning of the moon cycle, end or beginning. And so if you can Google what are the new moons of the year, and it'll tell you the dates of the new moons. And if you break that down, so there's 12 to 13 new moons a year. And if you break that down and say, okay, at each new moon, I'm going to set a new business goal to come out 6 months later from setting that goal. So if it's May and you set a goal, you're going to check up on it in November. And you kind of put these little touch points in your calendar and be like, oh, November, go back and check the goal that I set in May. And you're in charge. You get to decide. I think 6 months is a good time frame. For some things, it might take a year. Then you say, okay, I'm going to come back to this next May. The 6 months tends to work really well. Every month at that new moon, you set a goal or something you want to achieve, something you want to check off that's kind of big. It could be like, I want to add 2,000 new followers to my Instagram, or I want to get an article somewhere. I've done that a couple times and it's worked like crazy. That's my favorite one. And then at the full moons, look back and celebrate all the things because we don't celebrate enough. So make sure, especially in business, you're celebrating your small wins. I remember when I first started, my partner was so good about this. We would go out and celebrate every little thing. Like, you got a new client, let's go have dessert out at a cafe. And I think do that. Give yourself something to feel happy about. My next one is...
Wait, one more thing to pause you real quick. What's so significant about the moons? Like, what's so significant about different phases or new moon specifically?
If you close your eyes and visualize, the moon cycle goes from a little seed to a big blossoming flower back down to a seed every 28 days. The female hormone cycle mimics this. The oceans are connected to the tides. There's so many tangible touch points with the moon. I think it's really primal. And if you start to notice every month at the new moon, you notice energy's kind of low and slow. And then it culminates and it builds up by that first week. The week after the new moon is always when things are kind of crazy. You're a little bit overwhelmed with all the stuff going on. And it's a crisis in action, growing moon. And then it builds up to the full moon. If you've ever known any ER doctors or elementary school teachers, they will tell you that things get wacky at the full moon. If we're looking at a chart, it's literally a polarity between the sun and the moon. And that's why it glows so big, is because the sun is shining all of its light on the moon. Internally, it's like this big culmination of, whoa, I can see things super clearly. I can see where I need to make a change, or I can see where the things that I want are not quite there. And that can be really disenchanting. And it provides us the context to go and take action to change things. So then in that last week, after the full moon, you have time to polish. I learned some crazy stuff last week at the new moon. I'm going to make some edits. I'm going to cancel this project. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to book that trip. And then you close it out again, and then the cycle renews. You get an opportunity for renewal every single month instead of waiting around for January 1st to try to make yourself a whole new person again. It's really changed my life. It's one of the astrology things that I really embody and live by, and I really can't recommend it enough.
We always think like, oh, we should always be going at it. Why? I feel like I always ask myself that question, like, dang, why do I have low energy? Why are things just all going wrong? Or why do I feel like I need to rest more? Or I feel like we need to be consistently just like this, especially as women. We're so much more different than men. We're so much more like this, even so. So I love how you lay that out, is like, that's okay. And we need to understand that that's okay. And to do different tasks, to do different thought processes at different times is really awesome.
Right. If you're someone who likes tangible examples, you can think of it as like full moon is like ovulation, where you want to go out, celebrate, be extroverted and social, and your energy is wild. You get into your luteal phase and you're like, I want to sit in the tub and maybe get some ice cream and cancel my social plans. And that's very like the end of the moon cycle. And my energy is always so low at that point. And trying to socialize and output is really tricky. That cycle repeats. You can think of it as a mirror of things already going on within us, especially women.
Sweet. And then what's the next thing you jump into? I want to hear that a little more.
Mercury retrograde. So I used this as an example earlier. Mercury has everything to do with communication and business. It's like your podcasting, media, copywriting, communications, pretty much everything you do in business has a layer of Mercury woven into it. When Mercury retrogrades, it really isn't this be-all, end-all that pop astrology wants us to think it is. One common Mercury retrograde side effect is like people from the past will come back into your life and be like, hey, I'm here. And you're like, maybe you're like, oh, that's great. Or maybe, oh God, how did this person get my number? I thought we were done. But it's a good time to revisit things. I think everything that begins with the prefix RE, repair old technology, revisit old projects, rewatch a course that you want to integrate the information in, reread some of your website copy and rewrite it, go back and repurpose old content from Instagram or TikTok and make new videos. Think about it. If you're walking along a trail and you're like, okay, I'm not going to keep pushing forward along the trail. I'm going to pause and set up camp here for a while, rest here, and kind of work with the resources that I have in this little area before I venture off onto the next spot. That's kind of what a retrograde period is. And they last for about 3 weeks, 3 times a year. And it's not anything to fear. Sometimes the level of output is tempered. And I think that can be really frustrating when we're trying to be like this all the time, but we're not supposed to be. So think of it as like, if non-retrograde periods are like up here, then a retrograde period is down here where we're just doing less and it's balance.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like I said, the pop culture of astrology,
right.
You see all those people like this word is thrown around. I think one of the most words that are thrown around and everyone's like, what does that mean? Like they're freaking out and going crazy over this word. I like how you said,
people be like, my house burned down from Mercury retrograde. And it's like, that isn't associated with that. Yeah. That might be related to something else. It's really bad luck. I'm so sorry. But that's not because of Mercury retrograde. Yeah. Okay, your computer broke. That might be Mercury retrograde. It's time to get something repaired. You have to think about the context of it.
That's a really great way to look at it. I love that. Awesome. That was the last
and then my last one was to plan your launches in initiating seasons. So avoid those Mercury retrogrades. You don't want to launch something during Mercury retrograde if you can avoid it, just because it's like the momentum of moving forward. So what is a forward momentum initiating season? If you're looking at the Zodiac wheel, there's 12 signs. The first sign is Aries. And then that's actually in our hemisphere, the first season, spring. So spring begins with Aries. Summer begins with Cancer. Autumn begins with Libra, and winter begins with Capricorn. Those periods last for 30 days, from about March 20th to April 20th, June 20th to July 20th, September 20th to October 20th, and December 20th through January 20th, give or take a couple of days, are your initiating seasons. So they're the beginning of a season. And I think those are great times, retrograde permitting, that you can get a lot of momentum underneath your seat to push something out. After that, each of those is like the stabilizing season, which is like Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, where we can kind of land and integrate. We're launching something and we're like, okay, now we're doing it. We're grounding in it. And then the end of the season are the mutables. That's your Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. So that's when you can pivot and change and whittle things down to get ready for maybe another launch or another project. So if you kind of follow the wheel of the year, if you start to look at the year as a wheel instead of just little boxes and quarters, you're going to find a lot more flow and a lot more energy boost. It's like getting on those walk pads in the airport. You're going to get there faster instead of just walking beside it.
Yeah, I love how you said, if you're listening to the podcast, she did a little wavy thing with her hand. When she talked about the calendar. I love that view. Instead of looking at it as blocks or lines or just a straight line for a year, you're looking at it as waves, right? It's going up and down, which makes way more sense. So when it comes to the seasons and starting up on that, just how simple this can be when it comes to planning your year and following that pattern is really cool. It really gives you a reason to slow down and to make intentional decisions in your business, which I think, again, we keep talking about that straight line toxicity when you're just going straight, and you think you should be, and then you burn out and you're almost making these waves to yourself in a really unhealthy way. When you're talking about making these waves in a healthier, holistic way that makes sense for your business. And it's just really cool to see it as waves. So now we all look at our calendar as a wave instead of
I was just thinking a visual of that where it's like where we just
we need to
a little wave, like little squigglies, like
there needs to be like a calendar. We could just see it go up and down.
It's almost like looking head on to a flower where it's like each of the petals kind of goes in and out. If you were to look at the wheel, like looking straight on at a rose, it kind of squiggles around the parameter of it.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. I love these tangible things we can think about and look forward to and really make sense of our seasons and not just fly by the seat of our pants, but really make those intentional waves in our business. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, there is such amazing knowledge that you shared that feels simple, doable, and sparked a lot of ideas and exciting things for people to take on their business in a new way. Thank you so much for being on here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun chatting with you.
Awesome. Any new projects you're working on or any places that like the best place to find you or work with you, please share with everybody.
The best place to work with me is by going to my website, kjatlas.com. I do all of my one-on-one appointment booking and applications for my business program Into an Entrepreneur, where we spend 3 months together creating your business using lots of strategy and lots of energy and one-on-one support. We're working on the second round of the Grove Almanac, which is my astrological Google Calendar that plugs into your Google Calendar with every astrological transit broken down in easy to understand terms. And it converts to your time zone, which is fun because I work with people all around the world. I'll have to send you one. I did it this year for the first time, and I'm working on next year's. So that'll be out in the next few months for next year's. You can still get this year's. It's discounted since several months of the year has already passed.
Awesome.
It's called the Grove Almanac. You can go get that. And then I'll be creating the new one fairly soon. It's a labor of love, so it'll be a little while. It's like 300
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. So it's a Google Calendar. Does it have descriptions in the events? Or how?
Yeah. So every day when you pull up the calendar, it shows which transits are happening at what time. And then it's it says like, Mercury trine Venus. So that's astrology words, but then it breaks it down as here's what that means. And here's what to do with it in your day-to-day life. And here's some things to maybe avoid.
So she now made a whole cheat sheet for everybody to start.
Yeah, I know it's complicated. So I'm doing my best to try to make a lot of resources to make it easier to work with.
Especially when you're trying to plan your year, right? Like with events and launches. I mean, how cool to have that calendar and be like, okay, I'm doing this here. And even planning your day out. That's amazing. Yeah. So definitely we'll have to put the resource in the description. Is that shop on your website?
Yeah, it's all on my website. I'm also about to announce a business astrology workshop series that's a little more accessible. And we're going to go through a few weeks together of some of these different frameworks we've talked about here today in a deeper way with some Q&A so that you can actually work with it. I've heard what the people want, and so I'm trying
I love it. Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll have to. So definitely her website's a great resource. It's going to be in the description. Please go to her website. Sounds like she's going to have amazing resources and workshops coming up. How exciting. Well, thank you for sharing all of that and for places and people to come work with you and have fun and dig deeper into this because this was really fun to talk about.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for having me.